All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inaugural relaunch of the Bryan McClain Show right here on Alternate Current Radio. I'm your host, Bryan McClain. Thanks for joining us today for this live stream. And yeah, we don't quite have all the branding and podcasting buckets set up for this show yet. So, kind of running it on the original Social Rejects channel out there at Rumble, the Boiler Room channel over on Rockfin, at the primary alternate current radio channel on Spreaker. We're also going out live over X. What's up, folks out there on the twits? And what else? I guess that's all of them. Oh, YouTube. What's up, YouTube? Thanks for being here. Looks like we've got a stream established across all the accounts there. And for this first episode, we're going to have our good friend, the Odd Man Out, joining us. He joins us now. Odd Man Out, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, doing great. It's great to be on with you, and I'm honored to be on your first relaunch show, so thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. The honor is all mine. It's really good to be with you here. You haven't been able to join us for Boiler Room because of the timing lately. So, of course, we did have you recently. It was your first trip back in a while, but this is great because it gives us a more daytime set of hours to work with here. So, very pleased to have you, man.
Thank you so much, man. I've been looking forward to it, and I think we got a lot of important things to talk about, a lot of crazy things going on in our world, and hopefully we can kind of flesh some of it out and help people to kind of understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, man. It's like drinking out of the fire hose lately with with everything going on. We were talking last night. It's just like it's like the daily Black Swan event now. It's just like, we've been talking about October surprises and Black Swan events and this and that. And it's like the pace of everything. It's just like every morning I wake up and like, well, what's in the illustrious doom scroll today? Oh, wow, that could qualify as a Black Swan event almost. And it's just like one after another after another. So lots going on. And yesterday, well, let me back up. On Sunday, I had Patrick Henningsen on with me on Sunday Wire, which was great because he's been out of commission since July. So it was his first trip back into the Sunday Wire, and we were talking about what's going on in Lebanon. Also, Israel, Gaza, of course. But, the big news on Sunday was escalating attacks in Lebanon. And now we've got this like militarized zone on the southern border of Lebanon. We've got Iran lobbing rockets into Tel Aviv. So all that stuff was popping off yesterday. But in the background, there's this whole thing going on here in the United States. We had a major storm, Helene, come through the southeast and work its way sort of up north. I'm told there's damage all the way up to Ohio, like from Florida to Ohio. So we've been very worried about a lot of our friends and colleagues, listeners and viewers out there in those various regions. Asheville, North Carolina in particular, major devastation going on there. But we're going to get into that because it's just, I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked at the mass media today, but it seems like it's being downplayed, if not just ignored outright. I mean, it did come up in the vice presidential debate last night briefly, but of course, those creepy ABC presenters want to make it all about climate change and existential threats of climate change and how they can get more money, more federal money, and more regulations, and blame the American population for extreme weather. While we can all just look up in the sky and see there's geoengineering programs at play here. But I mean, I kind of dished out a mouthful there. So let's launch into it. Let me get your opinion first, though, on this escalating conflict, because that was sort of the big news yesterday. Let's cover that real quick here.
Well, I've kind of been sidetracked away from that, but of course I know it's going on, and it doesn't surprise me because we know that's part of the plan. I was looking back at the infamous General Wesley Clark, 7 countries statement, and I believe Lebanon was on that list, although we know that Israel tried to take Lebanon, a few decades ago. So it's definitely in the plans. And I think they're just going for it, man. They're just going for it because why not? You have the awesome might of the U.S. military to back you up no matter what you do. And, we've been over there in the Middle East sticking our noses where it doesn't belong since the 50s, at least. looking back to Operation Ajax when we overthrew the leader of Iran, probably because the Dulles brothers were mad about a business deal that didn't go through. So, it's really a bad news. It's pushing us further towards this conflict, which apparently that's all that our representatives can think about if you watch X, because they're constantly pray for Israel, pray for Israel. And I know that wasn't that one of the first statements by the VP candidates last night. They're basically pledging their allegiance to Israel right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah, they opened the debate with something they completely agreed on and just underscored what we've been saying forever. It's like either way, Israel wins. They may have a preference, perhaps, because you know, much like a Biden presidency, a Harris presidency is going to be the same. You've got someone who's completely checked out, geopolitically illiterate, captured by the lobby, and it's for them, maybe it's a preference to have that because then they're strictly dealing with an administrative state, right? Where it's like with Trump, like, yeah, he's going to support them no matter what, and they probably don't need to worry about it. But you've got that personality in there, and that group of people around him that could slow things down. Whereas right now, it's like, hey, we need another $8 billion. Oh, you need another $8 billion? Well, we just had a number of American towns wash away in a flood, but we're happy to cut that check. I mean, it's crazy. Like this thing that we're about to talk about makes me think of Lahaina, makes me think of East Palestine, makes me think of Flint, Michigan. We could just go on and on, especially in the last couple of years, because we've had quite literally like hundreds of things just go boom on us. Like we've had all the food factory plants that have had fires. We've had all these explosions and derailments. It's like we're kind of getting beyond the realm of coincidence theory right now, but just crazy to think that so many Americans are missing, are destitute, are perhaps injured somewhere and need help, are perhaps without water right now, definitely without power and communications and internet and all that stuff. So, it's like, yeah, I think we've sent like $17 billion to 3 different countries in the last week or so while this is going on.
It's just amazing that the people continue to put up with it, and I think they just keep our attention diverted to other things. Kind of going back to what you're saying about Israel maybe preferring Kamala Harris as president, possibly. I was trying to think about that, about as far as, because everything is the illusion. They're putting up these illusions, to kind of appease people or make people think this or that. It would probably be better in the long run for a Kamala presidency as far as Israel's concerned, because if you think about it, just the way the propaganda works, the left and right propaganda, no matter what the left is doing as far as Israel, giving them weapons, giving them money, the right, because of mainly because of conservative media, has the people convinced on the right that liberals hate Israel, which it couldn't be farther from the truth. So if we have a Kamala presidency, the conservative side is going to be pushing to give them more and more and more, no matter what, which they would anyway. So, I may not be making sense here, but from a strategic point, it may work out better for Israel if Kamala is there. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you laid it out actually very well. The thing is, it's not supposed to make sense to people like us. It's like we're supposed to be the weirdos for sitting here going, now wait a minute. We've got the Biden administration, like they're what they say and what they do are two completely different things. It's like there's this talking point now that the mass media has tried to insert where it's like, oh, if you don't like what's happening in Gaza, then you're a leftist. That's a leftist thing. And that has been confused by the way that the protests have been framed, and the way that, you do have astroturfing insertions within the protest. You know what I mean? The optics, the media optics, make it look to conservatives like this issue is a right left issue, and that progressives are Hamas supporters somehow, or something like this. And it's like you've got Soros money in there, you've got people being bussed in to Kamala rallies, 500 cell phones tracked. Someone's been out there tracking cell phones, and it's like the same 500 people went to like Kamala rallies between like Arizona and Pennsylvania or something like that. People getting bussed in. There's so much astroturfing going on. It's absolutely crazy. And then those that are actually, anti-war protesters, or people that are critical of Israel, it just then becomes easy for the mass media to try to frame them as, somehow they're pro terrorism or something like that. It's really absurd. But then you look at so that's what's being said, but then you look at what they actually do, and it's like, a couple months back, you can find footage of Harris, saying, oh, we need a ceasefire and a two-state solution, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like right after that goes to a APAC meeting, and it's like, we're going to support no matter what, we got you. So it's a really convoluted environment if you're not like really paying attention and have a decent grasp on the region and the history.
Definitely. Yeah, you definitely got to look past the headlines and kind of look past the first layer or two to see what's really going on. And most people don't do that, unfortunately, and they kind of just believe what they want to believe, what Glenn Beck or somebody tells them to believe.
Yeah.
So, um,
Right.
because that's just the way the nature of our media, unfortunately, that people kind of have this real black and white idea of what everything is, when it's way more complicated than that. And one thing I've kind of come to the conclusion of is, Soros actually, as horrible as he is, and I hate the guy, and I've done a show about him and all this. Sometimes his money goes to things that are decent, and that's the kind of the nature of the whole thing, like Amnesty International, or Jewish Voice for Peace, or whatever. Uh, because he's got so much money throwing it around, it's bound to go to some decent places every now and then. I remember early on in the protests, Jewish Voice for Peace, they had a bunch of protesters, most of them Jewish.
Hmm.
They were at one of the colleges, and the mainstream media were calling them Hamas terror or sympathizers,
Yeah.
terrorist sympathizers, and they were misrepresenting one of their chants. I forget what it was some anti-war chant, and they were totally misrepresenting it, making it sound like that they hated Israel. It was like the biggest farce I've ever seen in my life. So we really have to kind of look at things a little bit deeper. And unfortunately, it's just a real mess right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a good time to be a anti-war activist and an Israeli at the same time, which is funny because we used to speak with Gilad Atzmon quite often on Sunday Wire, years ago, and he was this he called himself the self-hating Jew, and it's like he was basically just pro peace and didn't like imperialism, and had a good finger on the pulse for where this was all going to head. And pretty much most of the things that he predicted years ago on Sunday Wire and in his book The Wandering Who are now coming to fruition. It's like I haven't heard from him in a while, but last I heard, he didn't even want to do interviews after what happened almost 1 year ago this week, because he was like, I've already said all this. This this is a known factor where this is all headed, and what the goals are. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see people like that being misclassified as pro Hamas.
Right. I know there's so many guys similar to him, that are really out there speaking out. Most of the authors that I've talked about in my series, those we don't speak of, have been Jewish authors. But you got people like Elon Pape, Shlomo Sands. There's just so many of them, and they're all saying the same things, pretty much. And so they're just hated by their own country or their own people and their own country to a certain degree. So it's you got to really give it to those guys for being so brave because I'm sure that's a hard road to go down.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially in the age of you know, a cancellation, demonization, deplatforming, debanking. If you're in the wrong country now, I guess straight to jail. It's like straight to jail for your disinformation. And that seems to be the push here. Is like, well, Kamala was even saying it just recently. Talking about First Amendment, and that clearly they want to shut down free speech. And to Vance's credit, that's one thing that he was talking about last night. He was actually, he spoke pretty well. Like, if you can bring yourself to come down from the big picture into like the power politics realm, it's like he mopped the floor with Walls. um but it's such, these are the chosen issues for mainstream conservatives. Like, they stated, we're going to run this on a free speech and the border and the economy. And it's just this very milk toast sort of high level analysis of those. So anyways, the freedom of speech thing is a bit of a quagmire, isn't it? Because X is now, Elon Musk, X, even Peter Thiel to some extent now. Like, it's funny to kind of see him come out of the woodworks, do the rounds on the big podcasts, and kind of, it's really weird, this whole, like, conservative, intellectual dark web, quote unquote, bubble that they're trying to build around this campaign. You've got Jordan Peterson, you've got RFK Jr., you got Candace Owens, you got Tulsi Gabbard, and then the just right outside of them, you got people like Peter Thiel, of course, close with JD Vance. And it's I wish Americans really had a deeper understanding of like the backgrounds of some of these people, and the fact that they're holding like many government accounts and contracts. And geez, even Elon got an award, like a WEF style. It might have even been directly from the WEF. I can't remember. It was like a Global Citizen Award the other day. It's just like, okay, I'm still seeing people get shut down on Twitter, but you guys represent the freedom of speech platform. Okay, I mean, I'm not convinced at this point. It looks a little shady to me.
It might have even been worse than WEF. He was at the Atlantic Council.
Atlantic Council, thank you. Yeah, exactly. And they have that digital forensics lab, which communicates directly with Facebook and Twitter 1.0 to do what? Censorship.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at the Atlantic Council, if people don't know, that's NATO's think tank or policy. I think they write policies for NATO too. But what it is another thing. It's this place where all these humongous companies come and donate an obscene amount of money to get influence. And I think if I remember correctly, because I looked at their contributors. It says Hall of Contributors 2023. If anybody wants to look that up, the Atlantic Council. Number 4 is Facebook. So, and of course you can find Google there. You can find Soros. In fact, there's about 3 or 4 different Soros organizations that have donated to the Atlantic Council. And that's NATO. Why, you would think, ooh, Soros is this big lefty. Why would he support the military industrial complex? Because he works with it, obviously, as we've all tried to tell people. Wherever there is an uprising, an overthrow of government, there is Soros, there is USAID, there is the National Endowment for Democracy. It's just this whole network of horrible people. And it's kind of funny. Quickly, I'll say that the main picture they put up for the Global Citizen Award had several people who won awards. Elon was in the center, and literally 3 people over was Klaus Schwab. So, and I said, how are you supposed to be an anti-globalist if you're getting a Global Citizens Award? Come on, dude. I mean, I know people want to believe that there's somebody representing them and somebody standing up for them, but you can't be against the deep state when you are a big part of it. And I think we said maybe on the Boiler Room I was on last that Elon's going to have huge contracts with the next administration, if it's Kamala or Trump, because he does certain things that other companies can't do, just like Teal and some of these guys on the left as well in the technocracy. So he's set regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like it's brilliant in a way, right? I mean, it sets up like a system that just has this beautiful veneer of plausible deniability associated with it. You know what I mean? It's like um we haven't quite federalized social media. We haven't quite nationalized, space technology, but same with social media. You could say the same. Well, it's not a government apparatus, it's a private company. But is it? I mean, when they've got, when they have like, STBL labs, attached to secret military internet that are communicating directly with, Langley and Department of Homeland Security and the Atlantic Council and every other thing. It's like, okay, so it's not part of the government, but it functions just like it is, and it's got a whole bunch of private contracts, but then it has a whole bunch of federal contracts at the same time. And the
Mhm.
Twitter files, Twitter 1.0 files, showed us exactly how deep that went. They it was such a coup, for Elon to buy it and then do this whole, recruit Schellenberger and Taibbi and all them to do what they do, and they do it well. They did the forensics, they did the journalism on it, they presented it, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like it just fell flat. It was only picked up by people on Twitter, and then it's just overshadowed by all these other things. And there's just it's really insane to watch it and be like, okay, this is where the free speech happens. And credit to Twitter, to X, we're here doing this right now, being a little bit critical, being a lot critical actually on that platform. But people like you and me and many others, like, if you're not on there hustling like 24/7 and, making new accounts every time yours gets shadow banned or getting to the point where it's, hit escape velocity and they don't really want to ban it anymore, you're pretty much still just you've got freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach, as their, CEO has said.
Absolutely, man. They just bury your post and nobody sees it. So it's like, okay, you're talking to yourself, and I'm guilty of that. I shouldn't even be using it, to be honest with you, because it's really doesn't help me at all. But yeah, it feels like to me it's kind of a way to herd people into an online space and spy on them. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Definitely. Unleash the AI algorithms to, flesh out the worldview of every citizen who's willing to be upfront and speak out.
Yeah, yeah. I just read the Cult of Intelligence, the old book about the CIA, and it was amazing, because they use so many front companies, and some of these companies would get so big that they couldn't use them for intel purposes anymore, and they just went on to be other big companies. So, I don't. Who's to say that X is not that? It would be the perfect opportunity. And if you think about it, before social media was invented, what would the intelligence communities do to have such a system that they could spy on everyone and have everyone just tell them exactly what they think and what they like? And I mean, go back to LifeLog, DARPA's
Mhm.
LifeLog right before Facebook was created and all that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
and we were talking about Peter Thiel the other day. I think it was Whitney Webb, and she posted a video of Peter Thiel at the London School of Economics and Social Sciences. And I've done those shows about the Fabian Society, and they created the London School of Economics and Social Sciences with the Rothschilds' money, of course. And the Rockefellers have donated a ton of money to that. It's still Fabian ran. And why would a guy who fancies himself as a libertarian be speaking at a socialist institution? And while he's on there giving his speech, he's talking about how he hates competition. And, it's one of the things, if you're a real libertarian, right? The market's open. If you really believe it, you want a totally free market. We're not bailing out banks. We're not bailing out GM or Ford. everybody has a fair shot, and if they don't make it, they don't make it. And I believe Rockefeller is famous also, David Rockefeller, for saying he hates competition. So, now we have we have the head of Facebook, Zuckerberg, saying he's a libertarian, and all these libertarian and right leaning websites went along with it. They did just like the mainstream news, basically, when they all say the same phrase or word, they all had pretty much the same headline about Mark Zuckerberg now being a libertarian. It's like, come on, people.
Right? I mean, what is a libertarian? We've been struggling with this one for years as it is. That's been a bit of a moving target, and now that the Overton window has been nudged further towards wherever we're headed here, it's okay for, Hillary Clinton to say words like October surprise. It's okay for Tim Walz to give props and lauds to Dick Cheney. It's okay for Kamala Harris to shout out Goldman Sachs. It's okay, to promote the Wharton School. It's absolutely amazing. It's like, oh, Dick Cheney's cool with you guys now. Oh, okay. Well, what does he make money on? Oh, right, the military industrial complex. I mean, we could tell stories. We could get into some historical background there. We could talk about the fortune he made on body scanners at airports in the wake of 9/11. I mean, there's a whole that was him, right? I think that was Cheney.
I think so. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Like 23-year-old conspiracies and facts to deal with. So we won't go too far back. But let's shift over to what's going on in the country here. So you're sort of in the area. You're in the Tennessee state of Tennessee, and we were talking yesterday a little bit about the stunning lack of reporting, maybe even misreporting or downplaying of the situation that many people in the country are in right now. And yeah, let's. So, what have you heard? What are you hearing from people and people out there in the doom scroll?
Yeah, well, so to give people a perspective, I live like 76 miles from Asheville, North Carolina, but there's towns in Tennessee that I live much closer to. 38 miles away, Newport, Tennessee got flooded pretty badly. The whole downtown was just underwater, no water for clean water right now, and there's just so many towns like that in the eastern Tennessee Tri-Cities area, in the western North Carolina area. It's unbelievable. I mean, 30 some odd inches of rain came down in just a matter of a couple of days in Asheville, in that area there, and it's the biggest city I think that's affected in my kind of neck of the woods. But there's places like Waynesville, Burnsville. I mean, I can name probably 10 little towns, Spruce Pine, that are just decimated, dude. 27 roads closed, 5 bridges destroyed, 14 or more bridges that are impassable. So it's, for people that don't understand the kind of the geographic layout, the way the mountains and the rivers are laid out, you only have one or two ways to get in and out of a lot of these towns. And so now that the roads and the bridges are destroyed, these people are trapped. And as far as Asheville goes, it's a bigger city as far as that region. You can only get in and out of there by air. So it's an absolute nightmare. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my entire life. I've lived here my entire life. I grew up just 50 miles from Asheville, and we would go there quite often. My wife and I were there 2 weeks ago. We were in Waynesville, which is 20 miles away from Asheville, last weekend. The places we were underwater, I mean, just wiped out. So I'm hearing that there's a lot of people that are obviously without power, without internet. A lot of them don't have clean drinking water. People that do are asked to preserve their water and to boil it before you drink it. A lot of people were washed away in their cars. I read a
That's
message
awful.
from a lineman, an electrician, yesterday, and he said that he had went up on one of the a little bit higher roads, but was still flooded badly. And he said houses were just gone that used to be there in the neighborhood. And he said that children were running around without any clothes on, asking for their parents. And he even said, and this sounds crazy to me, but he said that you could smell dead bodies, the actual smell of dead bodies. So I think whatever the media is saying, I think we're going to hear that this is a huge fatality situation, much bigger than what they were originally trying to say, because it happened so fast and nobody was expecting it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's that's really scary because we were talking last night about this. It was similar when the fire started in Maui, and they still the death toll that they still give in Maui is difficult for many people to accept. And I think part of the reason is there were entire families that were wiped out in some cases. And, you know, there was nobody to report them missing in many cases. And it's like I could see the same thing happening here because we saw so many structures destroyed, washed away. Like you said, entire vehicles, a vehicle could likely have an entire family in it. So I forget what the numbers they were putting out were yesterday, but they were close to 100, I think, fatalities. But there are people saying, there's like over 1,000 missing people, and this is just an estimate. I don't even see how they can get very much good data or anyone can make an accurate estimate when we've got so many places affected and such big places affected, such rural places, like you said, that are difficult to get in and get out of, like, mountainous towns along rivers and such. Rivers rising like 27 feet or something, I think you told me yesterday. I mean, that is insane.
It's amazing. Like I-40, the main interstate going between Tennessee and North Carolina, I've taken that dozens upon dozens of times, and it washed out the side headed towards North Carolina. The river came up somehow and just washed the interstate away. And I think I was telling you yesterday, when you're driving through there, you can barely even see the river. It's so far down the bank, but somehow it came up so much that it washed that road out, that highway out. Um, I can't imagine it. I mean, there were videos of the local, just one of the areas in Asheville that's I think near the Walmart, and there's a shopping center there, the Wendy's. The water was almost at the very top of the Wendy's building, and it was just, no one could have predicted that or prepared for that. Um, I heard this morning on local news that some of the houses on the mountains, the people thought they were fine, because they were going to be away from the water. The water and the rain was so much that it loosened the ground underneath, and the houses just collapsed with families and just crushed, falling down the mountains. And so there's going to be those kinds of things happening too. And I think we talked about it yesterday, the environmental impact that this is going to have on the whole area, the water, the cleanup, all the chemicals and different things that are just in the waters and just going to be left behind. All the metals and glass and different things like that. It's just hard to imagine it's going to be years, unfortunately, before they're able to get all this stuff cleaned up.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And, not to be looking too far out ahead of the tragedies we're seeing here, but this is the kind of thing like in California, it's fire, right? And they've dealt with so much fire there over the last 10 years that it's now becoming near impossible for many people to get homeowners insurance. I mean, it's bananas. It's a racket they're setting up there almost. I mean, many people can't get it. Like it's the cost of it has gone skyrocketed. Some of the providers have pulled out of the state altogether. I could pick on a couple, but I don't even know if there's a point. Um, and it's like now there's a separate state-run insurance that people can get, and many people are forced to get. So it's like you have to pay the state of California's, insurance, whatever that is. Why a state should have an insurance company is beyond me in this country in 2024. But Imagine that, like having to spend like, 12,000 dollars a year, or 30,000 dollars a year on homeowners insurance, and then have a second one that you have to pay to the state, all the while knowing that, they're not gonna clear the brush, they're not gonna bury the lines, they're not gonna update the infrastructure, and you're sitting there paying $500 a month in the summertime to try to keep your house cool, and then your insurance prices spike, and, all in the background, we've got BlackRock and Vanguard and these other companies buying up entire suburbs, buying up, all the single family homes. And, we wonder, well, how are they going to get us into this hole? You won't own anything and you'll like it. Well, if you want to like your life, guess what? Home ownership may not be in it, coming up real soon here.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but you can't hardly help it when you start putting some of the clues together. And we know that this is where things are leading. They don't want us to own houses. They've told us, you will own nothing and like it. So they've told us what their plans are. And a lot of these people, I'm sure, didn't have flood insurance because nothing like this had ever happened. Why would they even have it? Why would they bother? That's the way most people think. Why should I waste my money on this? Um, and so they're going to be just out houses, cars, you name it, everything that they owned. We were talking about how there were houses floating down what wasn't even the river, it was a neighborhood, but then there was a river all of a sudden in the neighborhood. Houses, barns, cars, the back of transfer trucks, you name it. And I was listening to a local show today, and they were talking about something I hadn't really put too much thought into, but there's a lot of farmers in those areas, in the valley areas, and a lot of them had their farms near the rivers so they could water the plants and whatnot, and water the cattle and different things like that. And so now their crops are gone, their livestock is gone, and their farming equipment is gone. So there's another big hit that they're going to take there in those areas. So they're not going to be able to make any money because nobody can even get to if their stores are even still open and their businesses are even still open, a lot of people can't get to them.
Hmm.
So it's just a horrible, horrible situation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look at that devastation on this footage we're playing here. I mean, it's insane, man. It's hard to imagine this being rebuilt, people recovering from this. This is I'm struggling to not use the word biblical here, but because I can't use the word biblical because I have a sneaky suspicion that this storm was not naturally occurring. I mean, maybe that's neither here nor there for a lot of people, but why was there another Hurricane Helene 50 years ago, like on the same weekend that took the same path? I've got some other clips. Maybe I'll find them as we move along here, showing, different views of the storm, different meteorological views of the storm with some really weird anomalies in there that people are pointing out. So, you know, um, we'll just, that's there. We'll set that, specter of evil aside, I suppose. I mean, feel free to comment on it, but we can only say so much about it. It's a suspicion. And we talked about this a little bit last night on the boiler room when they tried to drag this conversation into it being associated with man-made climate change. It's like we can't even talk about man-made climate change when there's a front-facing, public, in our face weather modification program happening. It's like it's just it's ridiculous.
I mean, isn't that man-made climate change?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. And aren't we not doing that? I mean, you by we, I mean, you and me and you out there watching people driving, traditional cars and eating hamburgers. Like, did you cause that? Are you sending up airplanes into the sky, spraying barium, strontium, aluminum, and all these toxins to blot out the sun? Are you, Bill Gates? You're doing that. We know that.
Yeah,
You've been very public about your ideas to blot out the sun and this and that. So,
absolutely. And it's just one tragedy after another in the area. I heard again this morning, just horrible news. It was a plastics company in my state here in Irwin, Tennessee, which is probably like I don't know, 55 miles away from me. And I guess the supervisors left when the rain started pretty heavily and told everybody else to stay. It was a small business. All 15 workers drowned in there. So, and that's just one instance. I don't know if anybody had, like some of the listeners will have seen it. There was some footage of a hospital in Unicoi County, which is near that same place I just mentioned. And they had to climb on top of the hospital so they wouldn't drown. And I don't know what they did with the patients and what happened there, but it looked like there was a few dozen people on top of the hospital. And I think those
Wow.
people were rescued, thank God. But just, something that these people never thought would happen. No one ever thinks that's going to happen unless they live in a place that floods quite a bit. So, you know, it's just the strangest occurrence that would happen, in those areas, and something that would affect not only the places we're talking about, but I think uh, Damascus, Virginia was affected pretty heavily by flooding, Spartanburg, South Carolina. And I think you mentioned even parts of Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia.
Hmm.
So it's something it's huge. The impact is amazing, and for it to get such little attention, uh, that tells you how trustworthy our media is. And I think they're kind of now being forced to give it more attention because so many people on social media have been posting about it. But even when they do talk about it, they mostly just talk about Asheville because it's one of the bigger towns, and it's a real Libby town too. So that may be another reason. And it's kind of weird. I just put all the show notes together to do a show about Asheville before this happened, kind of the good and the bad. Because again, I was just there, and it is a really cool place. I would definitely, well, before this, I would suggest people go check it out. It's a special place. In that whole area. One thing I want to mention quickly is one of the other things I think that's interesting about what happened. That whole area, especially the Western North Carolina area and Asheville itself, have always they've prided themselves in trying to keep it local and keep these big chains out as much as possible. And so there are so many local businesses that have been hit, local artisans and restaurants and breweries and different things like that. It's a special area because of that, not just because of the mountains and the rivers. And so a lot of those people are just going to be devastated. The businesses are not coming back. Most of them, I would say. And how can you not think that BlackRock, Blackstone, and the like are going to come in there and just buy up all the property?
Yeah, yeah. And here exactly. And that makes me think of again Lahaina, big time. And a lot of the other thing, a lot of these places are well, let's just entertain this idea for a moment here. So Matt Wallace put this together. He's on X. He posted this on X. He says, took me a long time to make this. I created a map showing the path of destruction of Hurricane Helene with an overlay of the 2020 election results. The storm seemed almost methodically miss the bluest parts of those crucial swing states while simultaneously ravaging the red parts. What a crazy coincidence. There were a few notable exceptions, like Asheville, which is about 60% blue, but beside that, the larger blue cities seem to almost get lucky together. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I might assume this is a big part of the reason why Biden and Kamala are still prioritizing aid to illegals over aid to citizens impacted by the storm. I would also wonder if it was all by design.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you got to think about things like that. I mean, it may sound out there, but again, we know that they have been geoengineering the weather. I mean, for decades and decades and decades. If anybody's seen the documentary Frankenskies, I mean, I think it starts in something like the 1930s or something like that. So you can go back and see. I think it was FDR talking about weaponizing the weather. Or maybe it was LBJ. I get those two mixed up. I think it was FDR. He's at a college campus and he said, he who controls the weather controls the world. Those were his exact words.
Hmm.
So, you know?
Right, because you can I mean, how many polling stations are gone now? I mean, let's just, very pragmatically, like, how
Yeah.
many voters don't have a home now? Is that substantial? I don't know the answer, but it's, likely substantial. How long is the power gonna be off? So many questions. I can't put this one on screen because it's over at Rockfin, but Teresa added, "Livestock and humans will suffer and have to toil unfathomably." And it's absolutely right. She goes on to say the topsoil ran down the mountains and into the waters for many. And as you must know, this will affect fish populations greatly. It's poisoning the water for such beings. I mean, that's a really good point there. It's like this is going to have long term effects. Talk to us a little bit about the geography in some of these areas, because it's my understanding we're talking about a lot of rural areas, areas that have one road in and out, areas that haven't seen flooding like this because their elevation is theoretically and well, not theoretically, technically high enough that this is not something that they're prepared for. And speaking of prep, where was the storm preparation? Like, we saw this storm coming a long ways away. Why? How did this just become an oopsie?
Yeah, that's yeah, I'll address the latter first. Um, well, the it's interesting because these towns are most of the town part of these areas are in the valley of the mountains, if that makes sense. And a lot of them are kind of stuck between two mountains. Um, and they have the river in there in that area, but they don't ever have to worry about flooding. They've been there for years and years. Some of the houses have been there like 150 years or more. And so they never thought that they would have to deal with something like that. So, you know, you see the water coming down both sides of the mountain, and then the river starts to overflow, and then the water just keeps coming, keeps coming, keeps coming, and then pretty soon, you've got just an unbelievable amount of water, especially in the lower areas that it flows to, which is mainly the downtown area where it flattens out. So where they put the buildings and everything. So that's really how a lot of these places are laid out. Now, Asheville's a little bit different because it has a lot of hills and valleys and in areas, but it's elevated quite a bit, and they never have to worry about flooding like that. So, if you travel through the area and just trying to wrap your mind around how that much water came down, it doesn't seem like it's possible. It just doesn't. I've been in almost all those towns. It just like Spruce Pine is another town that got hammered. And we were there last year, and we ate lunch at a really cool little place there. Went to a brewery there and hit some antique shops. And the town actually is on a hill, and either side goes down quite a ways. The underside of the town is kind of a little bit lower, but just imagining that valley filling up with that enough water to flood those stores, I can't wrap my mind around it. It doesn't seem possible, and I'm sure the other people and the people that live there in those areas never thought it would be possible either.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And we had a tornado hit here in Central Texas a few months ago, back in May, I think. And I know people that immediately after it happened saw hoodlums running into gas stations and looking for condos that were unmanned and damaged and had open access to. And it looks like, unfortunately, we're seeing that also. Check this out.
So update right now, uh, the biggest problem after Hurricane Helena is just you're not able to move. Some of my friends just try to go to Tennessee. The roads are completely blocked off. You're not getting out. Um, we're trapped in. There's a lot of looters. Please stay safe. Stay aside. If you have a weapon, keep it on you because there are people intentionally sabotaging stuff. So over in on I-40, there was some truckers coming in with supplies and medical stuff trying to help us. They stuck at a truck stop. to get some rest. When they woke up, their tires were slashed. Nothing was stolen, just tires were slashed. The same thing is happening all over the place. People are intentionally just vandalizing stuff, not stealing, just vandalizing. And then there's looting happening in all the stores. I'll come back with an update in about 5 or 6 hours. Everyone stay safe.
All right, that's from user Ace Fighter over there. I'm not sure which platform, but and then of course I saw this one come up, posted on X here by James E, replying to Wall Street Apes, who posted some of this. He writes, "These are the types of looters they're dealing with." So we get a little bit of this action too. There you go. I guess that the takeaway here is that we've got people who are here illegally, perhaps criminals from other countries, perhaps. I don't know. That's what they're implying, I'd say. But yeah, that whole factor is pretty scary too, man. That we now live in a place in time where when something like this happens, like when the tornado happened here, I saw Texans coming together, neighbors checking on neighbors, and people helping each other out. People immediately start clearing their yards and their neighbors' yards, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, on the other side of town, I'm hearing reports from people that live in lower income apartments and stuff like that saying, yeah, it actually turned into a big, like, scary event, and people were looting, and the police had to come section off whole areas, suburbs, and you'd have to prove that you actually lived there to even get in because it was so bad.
Yeah, I'll say this about Asheville. It has a pretty bad homeless problem, and they've actually cultivated that because they kind of like to play it off as a bohemian hippie town, which it kind of is. But at the same time, there's quite a bit of money in Asheville too. And they have these drum lines at like 5 o'clock every day, and it's like the city actually pays these people to come out and do the drum lines, all hippie style and everything. But they really do have a homeless problem, and they have a pretty bad drug problem. In fact, I was doing the research for the show, and they just got something like, I want to say 90, I don't know, 90 million sounds high, but it was a lot of money to fight their drug problem with heroin and different things like that. And I don't know what they've done with that, because a lot of the locals were saying that there's still huge problems. A lot of the local businesses were saying that a lot of these drug users, IV drug users would do drugs right in front of their businesses, come in their businesses and scare the customers and stuff like that. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but just to say that they have a lot of homeless, and that could really present a lot of desperate people immediately, because those guys are not going to have a lot of places to go when it starts raining. And perhaps the people that give them food will not be able to give them food anymore. And so they're probably going to be the first to take on, to get desperate and try to go into these stores and different things like that. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's a harsh situation for sure. And again, where's the aid? Why are people not able to leave the state? Why are people not able to enter the state? What's going on with local law enforcement? What's the story with the slashed tires and the vandalizing? We've got a colleague who was telling me yesterday that you know one of our uh, mutual friends in media, Dead Warpool, actually. You can follow him on TikTok. That's where he's most active. But he was able to crowdfund some money, to get some relief out there, and had pallets of water on trucks and stuff like that. And they can't even get through. Like, they're not even letting aid get through to dispersion points where it can help people. So what's that all about? That again makes me think of what happened in Lahaina. They had this crazy disaster. There's a lot of confusion about what the death toll was, and what does FEMA and the government and the state do? They come in and they cordon off the whole thing. They won't let anyone in or out. They tell you can't take pictures of it. Even you're still not allowed to take pictures of Lahaina. It's why is that? This is a natural disaster, guys, right? Like, this is a natural disaster. Why is there any reason why people's freedom of speech and movement are being removed. And is that what we're going to see here too? And then we get into like, we'll probably, maybe now's a good time, I don't know, but then we get into like the ongoing land rights disputes that were happening at the time. In the case of Lahaina, it had to do with water rights for the locals, um, property rights, these kind of things. And they were about to have a big win in that water rights cases that they were looking at. And now it's just a non-issue because nobody's been allowed to rebuild there. Like there's literally, I think there's I have the figures somewhere. I don't have them in front of me, but Barry Nesbaum would come on the TNT show all the time and give us updates, and it's absolutely insane how nothing has been allowed to be rebuilt there. And I'm sure probably putting the cart a little bit ahead of the horse here, as we don't even really know the full gravity of what we've seen yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see something similar, in the places in the Southeast that have been affected.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, because we know that their plans are, the elite's plans are to get us away from the rural areas into the cities, smart cities. And so there was rumors that they were about to turn Asheville into a smart city. And I haven't looked into that deeply, but I'm sure it was in the plans because again, it has a very liberal government, which I think is one of the reasons why the drug problem and the homeless problem's been so bad there. But it's this beautiful area too. So that would be even more of an enticement for the elites to get people out of there so they can have it to themselves. Um, it wouldn't surprise me a bit. It's and a lot of these people are kind of spread out where they live too, and so if their homes are gone, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out if they can actually prevent them from rebuilding or not. They may have a little bit harder time getting these people to obey. I don't
Yeah.
know. We're talking about some mountain people here, so
Hmm.
um,
That was nice. That was nice to say mountain people instead of the R word.
right, right. Yeah, so they might not take too kindly to being told they can't go back to their land. So
Yeah, that could get a lot uglier there than, because we're talking about a lot of areas now. Not just Lahaina's like one very specific location. This is a swath of terrible effects that we're dealing with here. So yeah, that might be a little more difficult to enforce. It's hard to even call it enforcing because everyone they arrested for taking pictures, like there's no laws against it. In the end, they just make your life really hard while they drag you through the system and all that stuff. Probably take years for some of them, but
oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
just absurd. In the last week, let me just read these numbers real quick so we have fidelity on them. In the past week, Joe Biden and Kamala have sent $8 billion to Ukraine, 8.7 billion to Israel, and 563 million to Taiwan. So that's a whopping total of $17.263 billion in foreign aid in the last week. Meanwhile, citizens in America are watching their lives fall apart due to natural disasters, and nothing is being done. So there's the exact numbers, if anyone was wondering.
Unbelievable. I mean, it actually isn't unbelievable. It's just it's par for the course. But at a time when so many Americans are hurting, they just continue doing what they do. Because they know that they can get away with it. I guess. I mean, who's going to stop them, and who's going to raise enough hell to make a change? At this point, they don't even seem to care what we think anyway. So they're kind of just going to do what they want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take a look at this one. You sent this one. This will be interesting. I'll play it for you and take your commentary. I think again, this is going to play into kind of that natural resources that topic that we're talking about here. But let's take a listen.
Can I tell you what I find suspicious as shit? that one of the areas affected by Hurricane Helene is the world's largest lithium deposit, and the DoD just entered into an agreement with this company right here to mine lithium for electric cars starting in 2025. Now that area is completely devastated. This is a $90 million agreement between the DoD and this company right here to get Kings Mountain, North Carolina lithium mine up and running by 2030. If that area has been inundated, is in a disaster zone, then the government can come in and do eminent domain, and they can pay you what it was worth 5 years ago rather than what it's worth right now. Imagine that your home has turned into a watery lot and the government comes to you and says, hey, I'll pay you what you paid for it. You're going to take it and you're going to go, right? What do you think is going to happen right here now that they want this lithium mine up and running by 2025, 2030 at the latest? Back in 1947, we had the Florida Georgia hurricane, or Hurricane 9, and it was the first hurricane to be targeted for weather modification. What happened was General Electric, the U.S. Navy, the Army, the Air Force, they poured dry ice into this hurricane using airplanes to see what would happen. Would they slow it down? Well, what happened was it slowed down a little bit, but it turned west really sharp. Let me show you. This is the path that the hurricane took in 1947. Does it look similar to you? Probably not. It's a coincidence, right? Moving on. I'm sure this is just another coincidence, but do you know who owns the most shares in that lithium mine? BlackRock and Vanguard.
Man, she was spitting some truth there.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you can't deny that if that is a coincidence, it's like one of the weirdest coincidences you've seen in a long time.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that lithium is like gold right now. I mean, come on, it's like one of the most precious commodities that they can have because they're pushing green vehicles so much, electric vehicles. So, yeah, I mean, you cannot overlook that.
Right. We're looking at, for you audio listeners over at thebusinessdownload.com, we're looking at this article. North Carolina's dormant lithium industry is suddenly hot again. And here we go. I mean, global demand for batteries has spiked in recent years thanks to climate initiatives that aim to electrify transportation and energy systems. This need, in turn, has pumped up demand for lithium and lithium-ion batteries. A 2022 analysis by McKinsey & Co. estimates that the entire battery chain could grow by more than 30% a year from 2022 to 2030. So that's a 7-year span that could grow 30% each year, when it's expected to push past 400 billion and 4.7 terawatt hours worldwide. So this is they want a hole in the ground. They want a refinery factory here. They want to be able, and I believe Tesla has contracts with this company too that are coming into play, right?
I'm sorry, my bell was muted. Yeah, absolutely. So Elon is definitely going to make a lot of money off that deal. And, again, he's supposed to be our guy, but he's right in the middle of all this. So it's really suspicious to me, because again, they pushed the EV thing so hard. And, that area being, I believe, is it Afghanistan is one of the other places that lithium is sourced.
Yeah, and in certain places in Africa as well.
And if they could do it here and get it that much faster and not have to worry about shipping it back and all that, I mean, why would they not do that? And so,
yeah,
it just makes sense that they would open that back up.
Right. Here's another one that you pulled up for this conversation, out of at PiedmontLithium.com, from their very own website. Belmont, North Carolina, April 15, 2024. Piedmont Lithium, or the company known on NASDAQ as PLL, a leading North American supplier of lithium products critical to the U.S. electric vehicle supply chain, today announced that the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality's Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources has issued an approval for our mining permit for the construction, operation, and reclamation of the proposed Carolina Lithium project in Gaston County, North Carolina. DEMLR provided the permit approval following a thorough review of the application submitted by Piedmont. The mining permit is subject to conditions both customary and specific to our type of product. So, clearly a lot of natural resource business going on in the area here.
And I haven't confirmed it, and you could have mentioned that earlier. I'm not sure, but I'd heard another person say in a video that a lot of local people were trying to prevent that mine from opening back up. So I wonder if that is true, because we've seen similar things happen in the past where locals didn't want to have certain things happen, and usually the locals end up losing one way or another.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's look at this one too. This is interesting. Another one that you pulled out for the conversation here. Let's see what this guy has to say.
I want to talk to you about the catastrophic flooding in rural Western North Carolina and how it directly affects you, no matter where you are watching this video from. This is what my hometown looks like after the flooding from Hurricane Helene. This is what this bustling main street normally looks like, and this is what it looked like immediately in the aftermath of the hurricane. The river is about 20 feet below the street. Odds are you have never heard of Spruce Pine, North Carolina. It is a sleepy mountain town with about 2,200 residents. It's also where I had my first job and my first date. This is what we call Lower Street. However, if you are watching this video on a piece of technology, you have a piece of Spruce Pine, North Carolina with you. The world's semiconductor industry hinges on a single quartz factory in North Carolina. In fact, take a look at this. The modern economy rests on a single road in Spruce Pine, North Carolina. The road runs to the two mines that is the sole supplier of the quartz required to make crucibles needed to refine silicon wafers. Why is that so important? Here is a quote from the article. Here's something scary, says one veteran of the sector. If you flew over two mines in Spruce Pine with a crop duster loaded with a very particular powder, you could end the world's production of semiconductors and solar panels within 6 months. Without Spruce Pine's high-quality quartz, there would be none of these crucibles, which means there would be no silicon wafers, which means, well, the end of the computer chip manufacture as we know it. Spruce Pine is home to the purest quartz in the world, and all modern technology relies on those pure quartz. Geographically speaking, the uniquely pure minerals at Spruce Pine were created about 380 million years ago when Africa collided with North America. There is nothing else in the world like this. The world relies on the quartz from Spruce Pine, North Carolina, and these are images from Spruce Pine over the last few days. This bridge was about 20 feet above this river. The bridge is completely gone. Here is another angle of that same bridge. Look how high the water is in order to clear this away. This is the grocery store where my family shops in Spruce Pine. You might not know about Spruce Pine and Mitchell County, North Carolina, but if you are watching this video on a phone, you have a little piece of my hometown with you. Mitchell County, North Carolina needs your help right now. It is already an area that is incredibly impoverished. Most of the people in Mitchell County do not see the benefits of being the home of this mine. However, they are the people who work in it, so they are the ones that are delivering this quartz all around the world so we can all have technology. Please lift up this message. Spruce Pine and Mitchell County are such small places that they are already getting forgotten about in the media surrounding this event. I know people who are still trapped in their homes, who live up dirt roads, gravel roads, people who don't have access to water or food. And because this is such a small area, it is not getting the same level of coverage as the bigger cities. Please don't forget about Mitchell County, which is a place that is so often forgotten about, even though it has given so much to the world.
Wow. Man, this is just too much.
That's amazing. That bridge was pretty darn high, wasn't it? Can you imagine the amount of water? I mean, just witnessing that, it's crazy. It's insane. Again, those downtown areas, a lot of those buildings had been there for 150 years, so they never faced anything like that. Just amazing. And I didn't send the article, but you had mentioned that last night. I guess it was Walls was trying to point to this being climate change, due to climate change, and that's the big angle that they're going with, because I pulled up several articles. I guess at one point, maybe they were saying they called Asheville the climate haven. So I found several articles, brand new articles. No, Asheville was not a climate haven, and no, there is no climate haven. So they're going to go with that angle and blame it all on global warming and climate change and all that good stuff, when, we know different. And also, how in the hell, with all of our technology, our satellites, radars, and different things like that, were they not able to give people a little bit more warning about what was about to happen? I kind of am wrestling with that. I understand that these things can happen pretty fast, but people are they have people working at these dams, watching these rivers, and they know what's going on. Uh, you know, who dropped the ball? It sounds like a lot of people did.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Here's Teresa asked another really good question over at Rockfin. Has any MSM addressed the prisons and jails staff and inmates in the flood zone? Yeah, great question. What's going on with were any people stuck incarcerated in places that have been flooded out? I mean, how does that work? That's similar to the question you were asking about the hospital, right? Like, how long would it take to move all the patients out of the hospital to the roof? Is that even possible without enough warning? And if that preparation and warning would have been done, honestly, in earnest and appropriately, maybe many of those things, if they did go bad, could have, been avoided. So, it's a really good question. It's an important question.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, because if people had more time, they could have sought higher ground. They could have gotten out of there, and they would have known to get out of their cars and get into higher buildings and different things like that. So they would have had at least a chance to survive. Uh, this this isn't, like my daughter plays harp, and she was on her way to Asheville when this happened to play a wedding, and thank God she got turned around. But she has some colleagues that also play harp, and there was some sort of convention there in Asheville for harpists at that same day, and she was able to contact one of them, and they're still stuck there in Asheville. Most of them lost their cars along with the harps in the cars. Of course, they're lucky to be alive, but they're there, no cash, by themselves, most of them, and no vehicles now. So, and their parents can't get to them, and their
Wow.
families can't get to them. It's just a nightmare.
Oh my gosh, that has got to be terrifying for everyone involved. Holy crap. I'm really glad your daughter got turned around in time before she got stuck there. That's really good news. But I feel terrible for the people that are in situations like that. We got one more here that you sent. Let's take a look at oh, where is it? It's somewhere on here. Here he is.
This flooding in North Carolina does not sit well with me. I think something's going on. So I decided to do some digging. So the first thing I find out is North Carolina has the richest deposits of lithium in the entire world. Yeah, lithium for like cars, batteries, all that. Then I find out they have the world's highest purity quartz deposits. And that quartz just so happens to be the world's supply for AI chips, microchips, and all kinds of stuff. We're talking a $530 billion industry. So this is where it gets interesting. So a company by the name of Piedmont Lithium is awaiting a state mining permit for a site in northern Gaston County. And Gaston County is completely flooded right now. The project was awaiting zoning approval because they were getting backlash from the residents and also city officials. And this lithium mine they want would be the third largest producer of lithium in the world. And they made a deal with Tesla already. Now remember the quartz? So in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, right next to Ashland, they are wanting to expand their mines even larger. And the residents aren't having it either. Enter the floods. People, these are mountain towns. It rarely, if not ever, floods in the mountains. I would know. I grew up in the mountains in Colorado, which means none of these people have flood insurance. I mean, the media is saying biblical devastation in North Carolina, AKA like the worst thing that could happen, and you're not coming back from it. Read between the lines, people. Everything happens for a reason.
All right, there we go.
Boom.
Yeah. I mean, he covered pretty much what we've already covered here, but at the same time, it's like, goodness gracious.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to mention. I don't think that I mentioned it, but I saw a video. I wish I could remember who it was so I could give them credit. I think it was Simply Graceful or something like that. But she was saying that so there is this food market, this grocery store chain in the South. It's called Ingles, and it's American owned. It says that on every one of the buildings. It says proudly American owned or something like that. Well, its distribution center was completely flooded, and so I thought that was kind of suspicious. Maybe maybe it just happened naturally, but here you have this American owned food distribution place now that is just screwed. And some of these little towns, the Ingles grocery stores are the only ones in the town. So it's really interesting. I saw, of course, because they can't, because most of the internet's down, they can't run the credit card machines and different things like that. And so I think the grocery store there in Asheville, one of the grocery stores, maybe the only one open, they had like 150 people waiting outside to get in to get food. And I'm sure that most of the people there, especially because it's kind of a younger town, most of those people probably didn't have cash. So, it's just a crazy thing because it being more of a liberal town, I'm sure there's not that many people that had food rations. They probably weren't really looking to have an emergency where they would need food and water.
Prepper community, not huge.
Right, exactly, exactly. So, and even, even if they had supplies, and if the water gets this to the supplies and you can't get to it, you're screwed anyway. So,
Yeah, and gonna be hard to rebuild your home when there's no grocery store around, nowhere for contractors to get wood and this kind of thing. I mean, it's really hard to imagine how long this is gonna take to rebuild and who's gonna get involved and how many people are gonna be bought out, like you were saying, for whatever they paid for it or pennies on the dollar. Another way to say it, probably considering inflation and uh, you know, value of properties and all that stuff. So, more hurdles for people to jump through. Maybe impassable barriers for rebuilding in some cases.
I would say so. And, just seeing some of the debris that's left behind, I can't imagine how long that's going to take to clean up. And I saw a couple of different articles today saying that they've already said that it'll be at least 2025 before the I-40 interstate is repaired because the damage is so great. And that's going to really hurt the economies of every one of those little towns that have the little stores right off the exits that people take to go when they're on their way to Asheville or Waynesville or one of these other towns. So even these towns that we haven't mentioned are going to be really hurt from all this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's so many stories that have not been heard yet at this point, and shame on the mass media cartel for downplaying what's going on. Shame on the government for letting things get this bad. It's just amazing. Well, I think we've covered it as well as we probably can here. So I'll give it to you, man, for anything we may have forgotten or final thoughts, and we'll let you get out of here.
Well, I want to thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I think it was important for us to talk about this and help others to kind of understand because, again, I don't think that the mainstream media has really given enough attention to this. And it's an ongoing problem that like we've said, it's not going to be fixed anytime soon. And these people are really, really hurting. And so, if there's a charity that you trust, I suggest supporting it because a lot of people have tried to go there and actually physically help. And like you were saying earlier, they can't get in and out of there. So, yeah, just keep those people in your prayers, your thoughts. And if you can help them out. And yeah, and check out my podcast, The Odd Man Out.
That's where we can find everything, man.
Yeah, underscore The Odd Man Out on Twitter, X. Trying to break that habit.
Yeah.
And Instagram, and you've got the link tree in there that's got the links to all my other places that you can find me. And yeah, that's it.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. That's Odd Man Out, everybody, right here on the Bryan McClain Show, inaugural episode of the relaunch. So stay tuned. We got more coming for you, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Odd Man Out. All right, there he goes. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you again for another episode very soon here. We'll get on a regular schedule shortly, but for now, they're going to be pop-ups, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.